Hello, all. We are live with another episode of The Dictators. I am here with my partner, co creator, and co host, Jonathan Fink. We do this pretty much every day, Monday through Friday, at about this time, which is 10 a.m. Eastern, and I believe it's 3 p.m. in the UK, a little bit later than that over on the continent. Lot to cover today, so I want to jump right into it. First of all, I want to announce an incredible interview I'm doing tomorrow, which I would love folks to tune into, and it's on my YouTube channel, which is the No Delusion Zone on YouTube, No Delusion Zone, and it's going to be with this gentleman here. His name is Adam Dunnigan. He's a former CIA operative, CIA officer. He's running for Congress in Virginia in the 8th district, I believe. He's an incredible person. He is the voice of the opposition to MAGA. And again, I'm interviewing him tomorrow at 10 a.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. UK time on the No Delusion Zone, simulcast on my Substack, which is protectingtherepublic.com. And I want to play a brief clip about Adam, and then we'll launch into other topics. So just please watch this brief clip about Adam Dunnigan.
Hi, I'm Adam Dunnigan, former Marine, ex-CIA, currently running for Congress in Virginia's 8th District, because there's no expiration date on serving your country. And I'm actually here to ask for your help. I walked away from my career at CIA because I could no longer support Trump's authoritarian project. I walked away from my career because I actually believe in bringing accountability back to government. I want accountability for the criminals at Doge who destroyed the livelihoods of our federal families. I walked away because I want accountability for the billionaires profiting from naked corruption in Washington. I want to see accountability for the politicians who stayed silent and let this all happen under their watch. I'm trying to build something different in my campaign. An insurgent campaign. Only relying on small dollar donations, and that's only accountable to you and not the permanent political class in Washington. So, if you want to see a new kind of Democrat, I'm trying to raise $60,000 by March 16th. $5, $10, $20, anything goes a long way to helping my team. Because here's the real promise. I will never take corporate PAC money, and I will never take special interest money. Our donation link is below. Please share our message onward, and thank you for listening. See you out there.
Obviously, that deadline has passed. That was an introduction to Adam Dunnigan. He's running in the primary, which is a whole other issue I won't discuss here right now in American politics. But the vote is in June, and he's trying to be the Democratic candidate for that congressional seat in Virginia. So one last time, please take some time out. Make a note that tomorrow at 10 o'clock Eastern time and 3 p.m. UK time, I'll be interviewing Adam Dunnigan on my YouTube channel, No Delusion Zone, simulcast on protectingtherepublic.com. One last thing before I turn it over to Jonathan on all the other news that we're trying to cover today. One of my other favorite best forever friends, J.D. Vance, just spoke at Turning Point USA yesterday, which is the rightest of the right-wing evangelicals and Christian nationalists in this country. It was 3/4 empty, which is a good thing, and he was booed repeatedly, but that's not the reason I want to talk about this. MAGA is fighting a war with everyone else in America that doesn't agree with them. And so I just want to read one statement from this to show you that it's not hyperbole from somebody like me or even Jonathan. They really see that the civil war is happening right now. And J.D. Vance said to the crowd, "I'm not saying you have to agree with me on every issue. What I am saying is don't get disengaged because you disagree with the administration on one topic. Get more involved. Make your voice heard even more. That is how we ultimately take our country back." And I asked Jonathan, back from who? That must mean me, us, everyone who disagrees with him, everybody who disagrees with MAGA and what they're doing, disagrees with Donald Trump and his grift, disagrees with the war in Iran, disagrees with the state of our economy right now, and that most people can't afford to pay their rent, their mortgage, buy food or a new car or clothes for their children. So everyone who disagrees with that is their enemy. And they believe they're in a civil war because J.D. Vance says they need to take their country back. That's what's going on here. One last thing before I stop. And this is another example of where the MAGA extremists are at. I want to show a lovely individual here for a minute. This is Stuart Rhodes. Stuart Rhodes is the one of the founders and leaders of a really peaceful group of tourists who visited the Capitol on January 6, 2021, called the Oath Keepers. He was convicted, sentenced to prison, and then, of course, he was pardoned by Donald Trump. And there's a story today, I believe it's in the New York Times. Basically, the Justice Department moves to vacate the January 6th convictions for far-right extremists. Basically, the U.S. Attorney's Office in Washington is now trying to throw out the convictions because even though they were pardoned and let loose, their convictions still stand on the record. That's not good enough for Trump's Justice Department. They want to totally wipe the record clean. So there's no record whatsoever that these traitors launched an attempted coup on January 6th and tried to topple the government and overturn a legal election. So that's what J.D. Vance stands for. That's what Donald Trump stands for. And they're trying to take the country, in their words, back from everyone else. And that's all I say about that. I'm going to turn everything else over to Jonathan now with all the other news that we're going to try to cram into a very short period of time.
There's so much. Well, I've put a particular thumbnail onto this episode. We've had lots of Iran-related ones, etc. But this one was triggered by my thumbnail. Oh, goodness. I hope that doesn't get us banned there with a little noose.
Well, this one will. Christian nationalism. This was a favorite icon. This was a favorite photo of the Christian nationalists, of the folks who attend Turning Point meetings. Trump and the cross in front of the U.S. Capitol, right next to that gallows, by the way. So these are very friendly people who, as Trump said, were just tourists taking a friendly tour of the U.S. Capitol that day.
Out for a day out, 6th of January.
Out for a day out with crosses and gallows. What could be better?
And this is why I sort of chose this thumbnail. So the title of my thumbnail today is Et to Melania. It was triggered by some conversations I heard on Daily Beast where they try to dissect everything that's going on. And they're completely obsessed with this speech that Melania came out and made. And actually, no one's really been able to diagnose it except to suggest that she's now trying to distance herself from Trump. Possibly she feels that some, more bad stuff is coming and maybe some accountability. But the subtext of the thumbnail that I put up there is that it should not be down to Melania Trump, who, let's face it, is not an elected representative, not a super brain, and not a paragon of, dare I say it, sort of morality either. It should not be down to her to hold Donald Trump to account. It should be down to due process, rule of law, democratic representation. But it does seem that it may be something as bizarre as Melania Trump that eventually brings this orange clown down.
I'm not sure what's going on, Jonathan. I mean, as you know, on social media, there's every conceivable opinion as to why Melania did this. I don't have the answer, but my best gut opinion is, knowing whatever I do know about this insanity, is that she's trying to head off whatever is coming out of this. She knows what's in the files, or at least she has a better idea than we do. She knows that her husband, if I can call him that, is in there over 1,000 times. She knows she is in the files, not just in written emails in statements, but also in many, many, many photos. So again, I don't know what the facts are because I'm not privy to classified information right now, but I happen to believe she's trying to head off the nightmare that's going to come down and try to make herself look, like you just said, as someone who might be trying to stab Trump in the back, the Brutus of Trump right now, et tu Melania. I have to disagree in a little ways. She would love to stab in the back. Don't get me wrong. I just think she's trying to save herself. Melania is all about Melania, just as if her husband is all about him. That's just my gut opinion.
Yes, I mean, I don't think this is a hugely empathetic individual. I don't think this is an individual who has anyone's interests at heart apart from her own.
Do you remember her hoodie a few years ago during COVID, and it said on the back, "I don't care.
I just don't care.
I just don't care." That symbolizes Melania.
That's exactly it. That's it in an absolute nutshell. And it could also be, I mean, Cheryl makes a good point here. There's a friend of Melania who perhaps is, pissed off at,
Mm.
well, being deported by ICE or whatever it is that happened to her. And what I find interesting is in a dysfunctional democracy, it doesn't mean there are no consequences, but it means the consequences come not as a result of people organizing to defend rights and to defend law. When it starts coming only when people are defending privilege, and this is the situation here with this friend of Melania, they will start to stick the knife in, but not down to any kind of morality or due process. It's because they themselves have been personally slighted. They themselves have lost some extraordinary, unwarranted privilege. We are unfortunately seeing the same thing in Moscow. The only thing holding Putin to account at the moment, it does seem there may be some consequences for his actions, but it's not for his criminality. It's not for the wanton slaughter of Ukrainians and the theft of their territory and destruction of their cities. No, it's because he's taken the internet away from ordinary Russians. He's
Yeah,
curtailed
Telegram,
their
yeah,
privilege.
yeah,
Well,
yeah.
unfortunately, we're seeing the same thing in the US. It's the threat to privilege, not due process, which may lead to consequences. That suggests to me that the solution, when it does come, is not going to be a principled one. It's not going to be one that takes us back to where we were. It's not fixing the problem.
No, not at all. And as you know, when Putin goes, whether it's being carried out, whether walking out, whether somehow retiring peacefully or in some other way, he's not going to be replaced by some democratic tree hugger. He's going to be replaced by somebody who's probably far worse. And the same thing, like you said, is going on here. These are not people of high morals and ethical values. They're going to say what they say, and they're going to expose what they expose, and turn on each other to protect themselves. That's all, period. And if that results in Trump being deposed, being 25th Amendmented or impeached or worse, that's okay, as long as they hang on to what is theirs. And that is what you read, Jonathan, or we read about the fracturing of MAGA. It's not because they found a spine or they found their morals or they realized that they've been traitors all these years. No, they're just trying to protect themselves. Having said that, if it does lead to the disintegration of MAGA and it does lead to Trump leaving the scene, I'm all for it. But just like in the Kremlin, I fear that whoever comes after Trump, especially, of course, from the Republican Party, he or she is going to be even worse. Unless the Democrats totally win the next two elections, 26 and 28, in a landslide. And that assumes that MAGA doesn't control the elections, which would forbid anyone from winning the elections except who they want to win the election. So we're really going to have to wait and see till November.
And that brings us back to Hungary as well, interestingly enough, because if you have not deposed the would-be tyrant, the usurper of political and cultural norms and traditions, which Trump is doing, he's smashing them, breaking them at every turn, like a bull in the china shop. I mean, half of this is not even intentional, half is, and half is just him flailing around, smashing things as he goes along. But unless the person that deposes him is doing it from a point of principle, the risk, of course, is that someone looks at this and goes, hey, thank you very much, Donald Trump. You've destroyed all the constraints. You've destroyed all the checks and balances. Someone far more competent and skilled and intentional can use that situation. What we're seeing, and it's only a couple of days in, what we see in Hungary seems to be slightly different. Every statement that Peter Maga has made so far seems to absolutely put his finger on the things that Orban has broken and seems to be saying, right, we're now going to fix this. And it may take time, but he's putting his finger on the problem. He's identifying the process, the norm that's been violated, and he seems to be starting to suggest solutions to it. He just had a meeting with the president of Hungary, and there was a nice picture which looked all cordial. His statement was extraordinary. It says that this guy is not the source of any political morality or anything, positive, and he must go immediately. So he seems to be going and identifying all those parts of the state that have been atrophied or willfully destroyed, and proposing solutions to sort of start to reverse that back. I find this incredibly hopeful, but it also says that it's no good defeating Trump. The key question is, who is going to defeat him? And if it's Melania and a sort of coterie of people out for revenge, out to defend their own sort of privileges and ill-gotten gains, then the result could be, I'm not going to say worse, because it's hard to imagine anything worse than Trump, but it's certainly not going to be an improvement.
And it ain't going to be Kamala Harris. Let's just forget that right now. The thing that's happening in Hungary is what I fear is not going to happen in America, and that is a centrist. And whatever else he is, Magyar is a centrist. If anything, he's a center-right.
He's center-right, absolutely.
Absolutely.
This is also important because
yes,
it suggests to me that actually what you need is principled conservatism to return as part of the solution.
Yes, and we don't have that in America. You and I spoke about that yesterday, and I think I droned on about it a little bit longer, which is on the left, meaning the opposition to the far right here in America, the opposition to the Republicans / MAGA. We don't have a centrist, even a central left person that's running strongly in the Democratic Party. The most popular of them are still very, very far left of the average American. They are still focusing on what are still fringe issues. They are not talking directly or strongly enough to the issues that affect every American that the Republicans do speak to. Whatever else they are, corrupt, traitors, you name it, they do have a strong message. They're hypocrites, but their message does resonate with the average American. The Democrats don't. Until we have our own Magyar, who is either centrist or centrist right or central even left a little bit, the Democrats are going to continue to lose. And the Republicans are going to continue to win.
There's another problem on the right, though, as well. There's another problem on the right, which is to have a conservatism that is rooted in concepts of freedom, going back to independence, going back to the 18th, 19th century thought, Thomas Paine and all this, Adam Smith and all this other stuff, and Burke, of course, as well, and sort of grounded in classic conservative thinking. Well, you have to root it in the idea of freedom. You have to root it in the idea of maximizing freedom. That in itself is an internal contradiction with the idea of abortion, etc., being banned. So you have to get away from the idea of religious identity-based conservatism. There's a fundamental problem there, of course, given the level of education, given the level of awareness, given the money that is sloshing around in politics, some of it, of course, coming from that evangelical right. We've got a real problem on the right, which rarely gets attention, which is how do we go back to a more traditional version of conservatism that really talks about freedom rather than, I would say, the unfreedoms of religious-based identity and trying to impose those minority views on everyone.
Well, at least in this country, in the States, it really is irrelevant now, unfortunately, what the roots of conservatism are. You're absolutely right. I mean, the current, and I don't call them conservatives, I'm sorry, they're fascists. The current crop of Republican politicians and Trump and MAGA supporters don't really care about what the roots of their party are. And when you've got social media, which I've said this a lot, is the reason that things have been turned. You can develop an Orwellian type of a world, of a universe, and that's what they have done. They have taken the roots of conservatism, turned it inside out, and made the truth a lie, the truth, up, down, black, white. And they have sold that false Orwellian world to their believers, to their supporters, and they've made them think that that's correct, that that's the way that they should feel. And anyone who disagrees with that is a traitor, is a communist, is a fascist, all sorts of horrible things. It's manipulation, of course, but it's done through social media. And since in this country, the educational levels are abysmal and getting worse. Most of the people here in this country, left and right for sure, get their information from social media, specifically on apps like TikTok. They get 10 to 30-second clips from these lunatics, or if they want to spend a little bit more time, from Fox News. They get a steady stream of Orwellian reality. And so, again, it doesn't matter what the roots of conservatism were. Right now, it's totally upside down, and everyone who disagrees with them is the enemy. And until we solve that problem, Jonathan, I don't know where we're headed.
And this is where I want to bring up this fascinating idea. And again, this might upset some people here, but there was a period where Trump was supporting both Democrats and Republicans, contributing to both parties. It was thought at one point, which seems extraordinary now, that actually he was maybe more closely aligned with a Democrat ticket or policies or point of view. That sort of seems absurd, given how he swung towards a sort of fascist, racist, theocratic stance. But maybe we should revisit that, because it also suggests that fundamentally he does not have a philosophy. What he has is a personality that seeks to manipulate the world around him. And he's landed in this part of the political spectrum, one, because maybe it's still slightly more closely aligned to his sort of, white replacement, KKK kind of roots of some of his thinking. But on other respects, politically, both in geopolitics and domestic politics, he quite potentially doesn't really have any particular belief beyond his own ego, beyond the enrichment of himself, his family, and the understanding that he needs to enrich a clique around him. And we maybe shouldn't quite see him through this left-right prism, because it doesn't really explain his behaviors. What we do need to perhaps look at is why he landed in this part of the political spectrum, because he must have felt that the right have an element of loyalty to their party, which he could turn into some kind of cult-like loyalty. There is less tendency to diverge from the groupthink that's passed down. And he may have decided at some point, or on the course of this political journey, that these guys are far more easy to manipulate. So these are my people.
I think he found, and I think you're onto something there. I think he found that the people on the far right were maybe not so easy to manipulate. I think it might have been the other way around, Jonathan. I think he felt that they were much more pliable to agree with him. Yes. And so he wanted to surround himself with them. But he also, because he does have this innate ability to tap into the feelings of the American political scene, of the American public, their basest, lowest interests and desires. He's always been that way. So he surrounded himself with the people that he believes would agree with him, would violate the law, would have absolutely hold him to no guardrails or policies. They happen to be people on the far right. He does, as you said, he has no agenda. He doesn't really care what's going on now. And I think the name of the movie I'm thinking of is My Weekend at Bernie's, where Bernie has been dead for a while. He died. He had a heart attack, but they didn't want to tell anybody about that. So they took Bernie and they kind of propped him up wherever they went. They put him in a bar. They took him to school. They took him to work. And here was this dead guy, Bernie. I think that inside or in here, Trump died a long time ago. And his sycophants, these far-right fascists, have been propping Trump up, literally, and putting him in front of cameras and statements. And he has absolutely no agenda. He doesn't even know what time it is most of the time. And they are manipulating him. So he is surrounded by the people who will never tell him no, but unfortunately are the most far-right Christian religious demagogues in this country. And one last thing on that, Jonathan, until he's gone, no matter who we replace him with, better or worse, until he's gone, Trump, there is no chance that we're going to dramatically change the direction of this country.
Is that because, he's not going to just disappear to his golf course? He's going to continue to bully, threaten, cajole, wreck opportunities, wreck careers. It seems difficult, though, if he doesn't have his echo chamber with him. And of course, he's losing many of the podcast bros, as they're called. If he, therefore, is no longer in power, there's no clear route to how he get back into power because he's, it's been speculated he's a lame duck at this point. At some point, I don't see Fox News continuing to follow a Trumpian line when he doesn't have the power of, what do they call it? The power to give out largesse or contracts or whatever. Once he's out of power, I see this all fading pretty quickly.
Well, Trump's power, his gravitas, his leverage will certainly fade quickly once he's out of office. But the monster, the Frankenstein's monster that he's created, will continue. MAGA, whether it's through J.D. Vance or whatever shady character comes after him, it's going to be just as bad, if not worse. But we have to consider this fact, Jonathan, and I know the mainstream media refuses to confirm, not to confirm, but to give this any credence. He may be around, assuming he's alive, after 2028. The Republicans very well may manipulate, control the next two elections. That's just not hyperbole. They've got the plans. They're already putting those plans into action right now. If they control the 2026 election, that means they will continue to control the Congress, both the House and the Senate. So going into 2028, what's to say that they don't control the presidential election and just declare martial law, somehow, rewrite the Constitution, because then they can roughshod it right through the Congress and or an amendment and sign it where the president can run and serve for indefinitely, for as long as he's alive. Or in the case of my weekend with Bernie's, even if he's dead. That's a joke, but I don't put anything past the Republicans right now. So don't write Trump off, and certainly don't write MAGA off. Their control on this country may only include about 30% or so, but it's a stranglehold, and they are not going to go without a fight.
That's right. And an interesting comment sort of made here, someone who is in shock at the lack of pushback, including in the military. And I think maybe it's because Trump has tacoed rather than confronted. People are just waiting to see what he does. If there'd been a full-on, military engagement in the Strait of Hormuz, maybe would have seen more people, objecting. It could be that one of the reasons he's holding back is because there have been internal checks and balances. There have been objections. There have been mass threats to not go along with illegal orders. We won't know exactly what's gone on behind the scenes there. And of course, we know Hegseth has been forcing out some top military people, as Mythic Plague points out there as well. There's something of a purge going on, quite possibly because of, I would say, objections of conscience to what are perceived to be illegal orders. That kind of damage also is difficult to fix. The trust, not just internal within the military, but the trust between the legislature, the executive, and the military. This is a tough one to fix. And then you have that sort of curious setup in your Supreme Court where judges are legal appointees. This seems to me rather a fatal flaw of the system. And I'm curious as to why it was introduced, why the Founding Fathers thought this was a powerful check and balance, because actually it seems to be one of the things that's put the political system out of kilter, in fact.
Well, look, there are several things that we look back on now in 2026 and say that the Founding Fathers couldn't foresee. Why did they do that? It's obviously a flaw. And I agree with you. I've said that many, many times. Excuse me. But, and I say this repeatedly, that was written in the latter part of the 18th century. And they are coming from a world which was ruled by monarchies. And although they were the best and brightest of their generation, they did the best they could to try to come up with checks and balances. And I think, Jonathan, for the most part, for the better part of our 250 years, that it did serve us right. The biggest problem that I've always seen in our form of government and with our Constitution was that it relied on good faith. It relied on Americans, specifically our elected officials, for acting in good faith, people of high morals, high ethics, who wanted to do the right thing, who weren't looking how to get around the law or to disobey the Constitution or to grift. We've had grifters, we've had liars in office all the way up to the president, but nothing like this. So in defense of our founding fathers, who were flawed, they could not foresee a Trump. They could not foresee a MAGA. They didn't believe that the majority of our elected officials would not act in good faith for this new country, this experiment that they had founded. And I don't fault them for that. I couldn't imagine that they could foresee a MAGA or a Trump or people acting in such utter disregard for not only law, Jonathan, but just human decency and morality. So I think that's what's going on. I pray that if and when the Democrats clean house and do take over the government again, that they rewrite the Constitution, that they file a series of amendments which are sorely needed and correct some of those very serious flaws that you mentioned that I've talked about before.
And they couldn't have seen, they could certainly have foreseen oligarchy because, there's a lot of dialogue around ascendancy of oligarchs from Greek, Greek discussions of the theories of democracy, etc. But what they perhaps couldn't have foreseen is the vast wealth that would come into the political process, the vast wealth that would come into the media, and of course the rise of the social media and the decline of traditional media. These are all things which, well, even 20 years ago, I think people would have struggled to predict the impact and the outcome of this digital revolution.
Social media has obliterated this country. I mean, yes, it's a problem all over the world, but when you have a democracy, a constitutional republic, which is a form of democracy, MAGA, if you don't know that, it's very, very difficult to rein in what people call free speech. And no one could have foreseen social media at all about 30 or 40 years ago. And no one could have foreseen the grip, the actual addictive and powerful grip that social media has on Americans, especially young Americans, but all Americans, and how a crazy, insane, and I would venture to say often illegal idea could spread instantaneously, something that fringe groups years ago would take days, weeks, or months to pass around, to get around their own state, much less the country. Social media has forever changed the fabric of our politics and of our lives, and in my opinion, for the most part, not for the better.
Absolutely. Well, we don't know which direction this is going, and we don't know whether Melania will be the one to trigger the implosion of the Trump regime, or whether it's something else, or the midterms, or legal process. I'm hoping, of course, that it's legal process. I'm hoping that his downfall is very intentional and very specific and grounded in law, because all the laws already exist to hold him to account. You don't necessarily need any new laws. You just need the implementation of due process and getting away from this idea, ironically, that wealth bestows some kind of aristocratic status that gives people immunity from rule of law. No, all law needs to be applied evenly, and getting back to that, I think, would be one of the greatest victories in terms of rolling back sort of the chaos that we have seen unfold, which of course is not over yet. Anything you wanted to sort of chuck in there? I know you've got this fantastic interview coming up, and we'll post a link, of course, here in Silicon Curtain.
I conclude with that because I really do think it's important for folks, not just here in the States, but in the UK and on the continent in Europe as well. Tomorrow at 10 a.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. UK time on the No Delusion Zone, the YouTube channel of No Delusion Zone, and on my Substack, which is right there, www.protectingyourrepublic.com. I'm going to be interviewing Adam Dunnigan, former CIA officer, former Marine, who is running in the 8th Congressional District of Virginia as an opposition voice to MAGA. to the fascists who have taken over this country. I think it's going to be a fascinating interview. Please make a note and set some time aside for this, what I think, very, very important interview tomorrow. It's going to be a live stream. So please put together some questions. I'll try to keep at them as long as I can. It's scheduled to go for an hour, but we shall see. So please tune in to this interview and bring your questions and comments and opinions. And on that, I am through. Jonathan, it was another good episode.
Fantastic. Yeah. And we had some great comments there, especially from our loyal community who've tuned in. Apologies for the sort of slight chaos around start times. StreamYard is being a little temperamental, but we'll try to fix that just for everyone's benefit. Tomorrow we're at 5 o'clock for half an hour. And then on Friday, we're doing a marathon live stream from 2 until 6 UK time. Dave's going to be joining us at 3, but I'm going to be kicking it off with Yuri at 2 UK time. And of course, we're going to be doing our fundraisers there for Jiggers Poor and the Vampire Drones and Car for Ukraine. So I look forward to everyone joining us on those two. For today, though, that is it.
Take care, stay safe, and stay sane.